English core. Today we are going to do your one chapter from Flamingo, that is Poets and Pancakes. It's a story by Asokamitran, and actually it is an excerpt from his book My Years with Boss, an account of his years at Gemini Studio in Chennai. This is the seventh chapter from that novel, you can say, Asokamitran 14 Years with Boss or My Years with Boss. Now, something about the author, Asokamitran. He was born as Jagdisha Tyagarajan on 22nd September 1931 in Sikandrabad, Andhra Pradesh, and he died on 23rd March 2017 in Chennai, Tamil Nadu. When we talk about his work, he has written more than 200 short stories, 8 novels, 50 novellas, and countless prose writings. And he has been awarded with Sahitya Akademi Award in 1996, National Award by Bharatiya Bhasha Parishad, NTR National Literary Award, the University of Iowa Creative Writing Fellowship, and many more. Now let me tell you the synopsis of the story. Like I told you that it is an account of his years at Gemini Studio. Now, what is a Gemini Studio? What was Gemini Studio? In 1930s, 1930, 40, 50, before the age of your colored movies, there used to be big studio houses like corporates of present day where the movies used to be made like any other product in a factory. There were people who were employed on regular basis. They used to be paid salaries, even if they are actors or writers or musicians, directors. And there used to be one owner of that studio. You can see the picture. This is a 1950 picture of Gemini Studio in Chennai. Okay, and that time our author, he was a young graduate. After his father's death, he had taken up a job, whatever he could find, in Gemini Studio, and his job profile was to collect the clippings of whatever is happening around him, current affairs, cut them and paste them in a file, and sometimes write the description. Okay, so now this place was situated in Chennai, and you can say Chennai or Madras in those days was a very important place. This was the place where the East India Company has made its own base in the beginning. Okay, so it is said that the place where Gemini Studio was, it used to be the first Governor General Robert Clive's stables. Okay, particularly one department of that Gemini Studio was in those stables, but there's no sign of the stables now. It is a different place altogether. So we'll be discussing about those departments of Gemini Studio. Then there are very interesting characters which have been portrayed by our Asokamitran, our narrator, his encounters with those people, and he has written about them in a very humorous manner, with insightful details he has given about them. But always his tongue is very much firmly held in his cheek. You have to see what I'm trying to say when you will read about them. And then he describes a few events also which happened there. There were some very important events which had taken place there at that time. And some mysteries were also there. And how they were resolved in the end, that all we are going to read. So first we are going to talk about the makeup department. It was the hub of national integration. That is what Asokamitran says. And it was said to be situated on the site of the stables of first Governor General Robert Clive. It was so full of mirrors and bright lights because that is the place where the makeup of the hero, heroine, villain, and other people, other actors used to be done. And a strict hierarchy used to be followed for the makeup. Here comes that national integration, because the topmost hero used to be painted by or made up by the senior most person in the makeup department. And then heroine again, another senior person. Then character actors, villains, and this hierarchy used to be followed till the end, that extras used to be made up by the office boy of that department. Office boy, a peon of these days. And in a very humorous manner, of course, the writer says that decent looking people used to be turned ugly by use of pancake. Now, what is this pancake? Pancake used to be a product in olden times which were used for makeup. Like we have, it was not a product, it was the name of a brand of a product which was something like a foundation. Now we have product or brands like Revlon or Lakme and MAC and so many others. In those days, it was pancake and it was used by truckloads in Gemini Studio. Okay, it was a requirement that if you're working in front of bright lights, you have to be painted nice and proper so that you look better on the camera. Next, secondly, he describes the story department. It was an assembly of writers and poets along with one lawyer. The unofficial uniform of khadi, dhoti, and oversized kurta was followed by everybody because those were the days when the Gandhi's influence was everywhere and people used to love their patriotism by wearing khadi. And they worshipped Gandhiji, hated communism, otherwise, they were a political group. And they all radiated leisure over a cup of tea. I would like to talk about these people who used to inhabit this story department, that they were the all major intellectuals of those times, because in those days people used to think that cinema is just like any art form and it is a very good medium of reaching to the people, like writing novel, writing poetry, making a painting. Same way they used to treat radio as well as cinema. That is why all intellectuals were drawn to this medium. Slowly, it got more commercialized and people got disillusioned with this medium and they started leaving it. But still, people are there who are still using it for social communication. Okay, so that is why intellectual type of people were there, and they were never in a hurry to earn a lot of money, or so they used to enjoy their time there amongst discussions. And in that environment, one lawyer was also there, and he was also associated with the story department. But his job was to give legal advice, but people mockingly used to call him the illegal advisor. Okay, because he was always used to dress up in Western clothes and stand out among the people because he was not one of them. Now you will say these two departments are very important ones, and you will find the reflection of these in the title of the chapter which we have: Poets and Pancakes. Poets, that is the story department; pancake, the makeup department. Okay, so this you have to keep in mind, and all the details you will read thoroughly. There were some major characters also described by Asokamitran. First is the office boy, and that is the peon in the makeup department. He was no boy, he was a man over 40 years. Okay, he was a bit of a poet and he had come to join Gemini Studio to become an actor or a director or a story writer, but because he was not given a chance, or he was unlucky, which he thinks he is, and he was given the job of being a peon, and major task which was given to him was to slap makeup on crowd scene actors. Okay, which he never liked. He says it is a very bad job, it is a menial job, I am not cut out to be this, I am a much more qualified person. So he was again jealous of the second in command person in that place in Gemini Studio, who was much more qualified to him, and we can say that he was a frustrated and a petty minded person. Now, another major character which I just mentioned, that is Kothamangalam Subbu. He was number 2 at Gemini Studio. Who was number 1? That was the owner of the Gemini Studio, like I told you, the industrialist, the big corporate bigwig, the business tycoon, Mr. S.S. Vasan. Okay, he's an important name in our history of filmmaking. And Kothamangalam Subbu was his right-hand man. He was a very loyal subordinate, creative and versatile poet and writer also. But he had given up his literary career to work there in Gemini Studio and to fulfill the wishes of his boss, that is Mr. Vasan. He was a very cheerful, optimistic, helpful, charitable and improvident sort of person. And people were quite jealous of him because he was at an important place, and especially that office boy, he was his enemy number 1. And then we can just surmise that maybe he was a bit of a sycophant. That is why people are jealous of him. Now, minor characters, but not that minor. S.S. Vasan, I told you, he was called the boss. He was the owner and founder of Gemini Studios. He was a brilliant, multifaceted business tycoon. He has been awarded Padma Vibhushan by the Indian government. So you can say he was not a nobody, he was a big person, and he was the person who had made a fortune for himself, and he had created a name for himself in filmmaking and brought so many new talent into the film industry. Another person who is mentioned in little detail in the story is the lawyer. He was part of the story department and he used to be attired in Western clothes. He was a man of cold logic and that is why he stood out from the others. There were two reasons. First, he used to be differently dressed. Like I told you in the beginning, all the writers used to prefer wearing Gandhian clothes. That means loose kurta and khadi dhoti. And they were all dreamers, poets and writers and storytellers. They are all dreamers, people of leisure, whereas he is a man of cold logic. That is why he stood out like a sore thumb amongst them. Now, some major events had taken place in his time when Asokamitran was sitting there and cutting newspaper. One was the visit of Moral Rearmament Army, which is MRA. That was an association which you can say was anti-communism association in Europe at that time. They were basically artists and they used to stage plays based on morality. Why moral rearmament? Because communism has denounced God. They said there is no religion, there is no God. So the conservative people thought, no, we cannot denounce God, we cannot do without God and religion. So they created a movement where they rearmed the morals in the society. So these people's main aim was that. So around 200 artists had come from Europe and they were hosted by Gemini Studio and people had a gala time there and two plays were staged by them which were liked by the people of Chennai as well as by these artists of Gemini Studio. And for a long time those techniques which were employed by the MRI people were employed by the theatre person of Chennai. Another important event was the visit of an Englishman. Whether he was a poet or an editor, nobody knew. Nobody knew the reason of the visit also. But one day they were told that some Englishman is going to come and he's going to address them. They started discussing. They knew, of course, his name, but nobody had heard his name before. And there was no reason for an English poet to come there, so they thought because Mr. Vasan also publishes one magazine, so maybe he's an editor. So finally the day came and that English visitor came and he was introduced by S.S. Vasan in some very vague terms like democracy and freedom and this and that. Nobody could understand anything. And then the visitor started speaking. He spoke in his clipped British accent. And there were the big fans on the stage which were making a lot of noise. And the people, those who were in the audience, could not even get a single word. But they clapped for him and the visit was over. And everybody was quite perplexed why this person came and who this person was and what he spoke. So this was the mystery which was there in the story. And finally, later in life, when Asokamitran left Gemini Studio, he started living his life as a writer. He came to know about this mystery. Once he wanted to get his story published in a magazine and he wanted to know more about that magazine. So he went to British Council Library. There he picked up the few editions of the magazine An Encounter, and when he looked at the name of the editor, it was Stephen Spender. A bell rang in his mind. I hope this bell rings in your mind also. Who is Stephen Spender? I hope you all remember. Yes, the poet of An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum. We have read his poetry. That person had come to Gemini Studio to give a lecture. What he spoke, of course, it was not understood, but here he found that, oh, I know this person, I have heard him speaking, I have seen him in person. So he was very happy to know about that. So the identity of the English visitor was revealed that yes, he was an editor also and he was a poet also and he had come to deliver a lecture. Finally, the narrator for us, the writer of ours, comes to know the reason also for the visit, because once he was looking at the books on the roadside, there he came across a book, a small book, which the name of the book was The God That Failed. It contained 6 essays from 6 different people, but one thing was common in those people, that they were all intellectuals of those days, and they were all communists in their youth. They were lured by, or they were impressed by, the ideology of Karl Marx. But later, after the Second World War, after the scene which was there in the world, Cold War had begun, they were all disillusioned by the communism, and for them it was the God that had failed them. So they had all described their journey into communism and their return from their being disillusioned. And one of the writer was Stephen Spender. So here the reason for the visit was also revealed, that Gemini Studio being what do you call, a capitalist venture, he was called there to speak against communism, so that people don't make the unions and don't go towards communism. So that was the reason that poet had come there, that editor had come there. Okay. Now we'll talk about the writing style of Asokamitran. It is simple and with clarity of thought, and it draws from the personal and professional experiences, stories around the lives of middle class people, and he was majorly influenced by B.R. Rajam Iyer, Subramanyam Bharti, and K.N. Subramanyam. Now I have some vocabulary items for you to look into. When you'll open your books and read the text, you will find these words used there. Let's see whether you know them or not. I'm not going to give you the meanings. You are going to find the meanings on your own. Thank you.